Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started now. First of all, I want to thank everyone very much for their participation, for taking a little bit of time out of their day to come and listen to today's topic. And this webinar is being sponsored by Huawei Enterprise USA. Today, we're very pleased to have one of our very best partners, which is Zadara, participating with us on this webinar. The topic today is storage as a service, and we're going to learn about Zadara's virtual private storage array. We have two presenters today. It's going to be the Battle of the Dougs. We have Doug Jury, who's the VP of Sales from Zadara. And we also have Doug Walsh, who's within the Huawei sales organization based out of the Chicago office. Originally, this webinar was really targeted at the central zone and the Chicago area in particular, but we do have some international participants as well as people from different parts of the country, so appreciate that. One thing we want to mention before we get started is that both the Dougs love lots of great questions, so we do have the ability for you to enter questions in on the Q&A panel on your GoToWebinar interface. So as the guys are going through the presentation, if you have questions, please enter those in the Q&A panel, and we will answer all those at the end. They're going to save 10 minutes or so at the end for questions. Also, we're going to have a couple polling questions scattered throughout the presentation. So when those polling questions come up, we really appreciate your participation. And as we always do, we will share the results of those polls with everybody in attendance so you can get a feel for what your peers are thinking about some of these storage as a service topics. And then finally, we are recording this webinar, and it will show up on the Huawei Enterprise USA website within 24 hours after this presentation concludes. So if you want to share the presentation with other colleagues or other people that you work with, please feel free to do so. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our first presenter from Huawei, which is going to be Doug Walsh. And Doug, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thank you, Nick. And again, good morning, everybody. I'd just like to spend a couple moments, go over a couple slides just to reintroduce Huawei to you and kind of set up the table of our discussion as far as storage in a virtual space. So next slide, please, Doug. If this first slide is just a general statement of what we see in the marketplace today, and it should be pretty much common sense for everyone on the phone, is really a convergence of two different technologies. One is information technology, which the way we define it is, big data servers and devices like that, merging into with communication devices. And now we're starting to see like bring your own device being very popular, virtualization and collaboration on many different levels. So you're starting to see these particular technologies, IT and CT, converge into one where you're starting to see the cloud and mobility. And that's really the focus of today's presentation, is kind of look at a different avenue of how to use one of the most important assets that you have in your environment, which is your storage. Next slide, please. A little bit about Huawei. One of the things that really impresses me is obviously is our revenue. We're a $40 billion international company. We rank on the Fortune 350 in the world's companies. We right now are in 45 of the top 50 telcos. We have about 150,000 employees, and what really impresses me with that is that 70,000 of those are dedicated to research and development, which I don't really think any other company has that particular ratio when it comes to R&D. We're also, and we'll cover this more in the next slide, we're very much a big top contributor to industry standards based off our actual R&D investment. So we can go to the next slide, please. And just a little bit about the R&D expenditure, because I think that's very important to understand about Huawei, is we are a $40 billion company, but we reinvest $5.5 billion back into R&D, and that ratio is over 13%. And again, I really don't think of any other technology company that can really put that statement together about the investment we make back into research and development. And as I mentioned, we do have 70,000 R&D employees, but to show you the breadth of that investment as a global company is we have 23 R&D centers located worldwide, as well as 25 joint innovation centers that we work with our other technology partners with. And it also is good to note on a couple points here on the right is, again, we adhere and innovate around industry standards, and that's where our R&D dollars go to. And what that ultimately turns into is our patents, a tremendous patent portfolio that ranges, again, throughout that entire ICT product family, which we'll cover in the next slide, Doug. And again, just briefly touching on what is our R&D investment in our product portfolio. And you can see that we span many different, all the areas within the enterprise. Starting with unified communications, we are a supplier of telepresence and video conferencing products. Our core competency, again, why we're in 45 of the top 50 telcos globally, is our switching and routing technology in combination with our wireless technology. And then finally at the bottom and really the focus of today's conversation is the data center. You know, we are very large in servers and switching, but more importantly is our storage portfolio. So that's a little bit of a breadth of Huawei in about 2-3 minutes. But again, this is why this topic of storage as a service with Huawei and Zadara is really key for our customer base. Next slide, please. And I think it's time for a polling question.
Well, you are very right, Doug. And the first thing we'd like to find out from you is just a little bit about what you're using today from a cloud perspective. So which cloud environments are you using today? And in this particular poll, you can select more than one. So if you're using both Amazon and Windows, Azure, and some private cloud, you know, just select them all. But just give us a feel for what you're using today from a cloud perspective. And I think this will help Doug as he gets a sense of how familiar you are with some of these different environments and which ones that you're using today. So we're just going to give you guys a few minutes to vote. We appreciate your participation. While you're going ahead and voting, I do want to reiterate to everybody that we love questions. So please keep the questions coming in the Q&A panel. And then at the end, we'll take those questions and answer those with the whole audience. So that will be much appreciated. So go ahead and just take another few seconds to vote, and we'll share the results out here just in 1 second. All right, we're going to go ahead and close the poll out, and we'll share the results. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of experience with cloud environments today. Half of you don't really use any cloud environments, but the other half of you are spread across a number of different services from Amazon to Azure to private colo and other public clouds. So that's useful and helpful. And at this point, what we're going to do is go ahead and turn over the presentation to Doug Jury, who's the VP of Sales for Zadara, and we're going to let him tell us a little bit about the storage as a service solution.
Thank you so much, Nick, and thanks, Doug, for the great intro as well to Huawei. I wanted to thank everybody for joining. This is kind of a worldwide WebEx. I've noticed that we had registrations from pretty much all over the world as well as the U.S. So good evening to the folks that joined. I really appreciate it when we have this type of audience. I'm really excited to be here with Huawei today. We started with Huawei with this whole project about 3 years ago. They were our first. Really our first server and disk manufacturer that brought what you're going to see here together over the last 3 years. We're going to talk about cloud. We're going to talk about on-premise as a service, but everything we do is going to be operating expense, no capital expense in our vocabulary. So anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. Once again, as Doug had said, we're going to focus on storage today. Huawei does so much across the board. But it's really nice to sort of focus in on a particular technology. So that's what we're going to do today. The problem statement. I know that everybody that has ever touched storage or any type of capital equipment or servers or whatever always says, you know, I like my storage array. I like what it does for me. It's reliable, it's fast, it's compatible, it's configurable. It does all those things. But could you please, you know, help me with this big capital expenditure? Everything I do is capital expense. I have these planning cycles where I have to make sure I get it right. I overpurchase to improve cost or scalability. I may need 50 terabytes, but I'll buy 100 terabytes, and I'll sort of grow into it. And hopefully I grow into it. Day-to-day maintenance, firmware upgrades, and things like that, disruptive updates, things like that. So all these type of pain points, if you will, or problems can be addressed, A, in the cloud, and with the products that we're going to talk about here in just a moment. So if you've ever had these type of things, then this is something that you want to certainly pay attention to, and you'll be glad you joined the session. So when we started Zadara 3.5 years ago, we said, okay, one of our design specifications is that we want to build enterprise storage. So we want to do the things on the left, the green area. We want to make it highly available. We want to build a very good architecture. We want to have dedicated resources, because in the cloud, if you've got company A next to company B next to company C, we want to make sure that those companies are isolated. So there's true isolation. In an on-premise environment, we want to make sure that sales is isolated from marketing, is isolated from engineering. So all those testing things that go on aren't kind of bumping into each other. We want to basically have a business continuity and a DR plan. We want to have multi-protocols, meaning CIFS and NFS and iSCSI. We want to have the choice of RAID protection, the choice of cache. We want to define the type of controllers and things like that. So this is what you do if you're buying an enterprise storage solution, and this is what we designed into VPSA. On the right-hand side, we say, okay, can we do that, and can we do it as a service? Can we make this 100% operating expense? Can we design this for the cloud? Can we make this elastic, where you can literally just touch a few buttons and now you have 10 new drives, you have a bigger engine, you have all these types of things. Can we do this in a multi-tenant environment where everybody's in this big hotel building, if you will, but we want to have a single tenant experience where everybody has their own unique room? So that's a great analogy, is we have built a huge hotel, but everybody has a very unique soundproof room that gives them a single tenant experience. Performance isolation is part of that conversation. No upfront costs, and if you're in the cloud, we have a 1-hour commit, and if you're on-premise, it's a 6-month commit. So basically, we're going to take the left, and we're going to build that as a service. Now, where do we do this business? We do this in cloud providers, and you can see we do Amazon, Azure, Cloud Sigma, Vivavo, Dimension Data, Serenitas, all these various cloud providers. And Huawei servers and disks are presented in a lot of those solutions there. If you look to the right, colo providers, we have a wonderful installation in Los Angeles at CoreSite, and we're actually building more and more core sites using more Huawei equipment. We're also in Equinix and Aircom in Ireland and KVH in Tokyo and so forth. And then we can also put all this hardware in an on-premise solution, what we call OPaaS, or on-prem as a service. We've just announced that about 3 months ago. It's going extremely well. But the real important part of this conversation in this slide is that all these work as an ecosystem. You could have on-prem and do a DR to a cloud. You could have your application running in a cloud and do a DR to some servers that you may own in a colo. You may have a colo set of servers, and you may want to back up and do a replication or DR back to the cloud or things like that. So all these can be, once you're in VPSA and once you're in the ecosystem, you basically have the ability to replicate and mirror between all of these sites. So let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into this. When we designed this, we said there are 4 things that we want to make sure that we designed in. We want to have control. We want to have the array created in less than 5 minutes, and generally it's about 90 seconds. We want to have performance isolation, dedicated cores, cache, drives, networking, and so forth. We have to have all the security things that people in the cloud and on-premise are asking for. All these series of authentication, kept secrets, encryption, dedicated drives, things like that. And we want to also make this very flexible. So you have cloud economics no matter where you put it. It's pay by the job, pay by the month, pay by the hour, expand, contract, do whatever you wish. And so basically this is our design spec to be able to provide this to our end users. Now, the type of data types that we're interested in, when you go to a cloud, you're always going to look at, okay, so object storage. That's like Amazon S3. And those are the things that you're going to browse into. You're going to basically, there's a lot of companies out there that do that, SugarSync and all the other ones out there. You browse in, you put your pictures, your movies, your maybe some software as a service applications can run out there. That's not something that we do today. We think that there's more than enough players out there doing object storage, and it's something that we're currently passing on. Where we're focused is we want to have our data, the yellow disk there. We want to have the data and the application server or database server kind of cohabitating. We want to have those within an iSCSI or NFS or CIFS relationship. So if you're going to put this in the cloud, We are basically right next to the Amazon facility or Azure or whatever, so it's about a millisecond of latency. And if we're going to be on-premise, we're going to, of course, be right in your data center, so that works fine. And so for customers that want to share files, have NFS mounts and things like that, we're well presented to do that. And if you want to run your big Oracle databases or SQL or whatever, we're very well prepared to do that. The upper tier, the object storage, is really, I'm going to say internet speeds. So there basically could be 60, 70, 100 milliseconds of latency, depending on where you are in the world. The bottom two are going to be 1 millisecond in latency, exactly what you enjoy in your data center. So that's kind of setting up the type of file shares and the type of blocks that we work with today. It looks like it's time, Nick, for another polling question.
You are right, Doug. And Doug has been touching a little bit about some of the reasons why people would use storage as a service. So our next question is really to try to find out why you might be considering storage as a service. And again, this is a polling question where you can select multiple answers. But give us a feel. Is it trying to move away from everything being CapEx and moving more to operational expenses? Is it a scalability issue? Is it the ease of deployment that Doug was talking about? Are you trying to reduce the management cost of all the storage subsystems, or is it something else? So please go ahead and vote. And again, you can select more than one option here on this particular polling question. We are getting some initial good questions coming out of the audience, which we appreciate very much. So please do keep those coming. We like questions, and I think the object is to try to stump the Dougs today. So see if you can come up with a very good question that at least one of the two Dougs can answer. Although I've been unable to do that, but you in the audience may be able to. So let's go ahead and give you 5 more seconds, and then we'll close out the poll and share the results. All right, let's share with you the results. So you can see that the biggest answer, the biggest response is that ability to move to an operational expense. We kind of have a tie between scalability and ease of deployment and reduced management costs. So all of those are also very important. So that's probably very good data for Doug as he goes through the rest of this presentation. And with that, Doug, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Nick. I love to see OpEx to CapEx because I really think, based on what we've been doing, we were at VMworld last week, and we had a lot of conversations about this whole capital to operating expense conversation. And analysts would come up and talk to us and say, you guys are kind of changing the world here. You're kind of changing the way people are looking at their storage. And I say, perfect. That's exactly what we want to be doing. So to define a couple of terms, first we want to talk about software-defined storage. And software-defined storage is simple. We're going to turn storage, or I should say disks, and storage nodes, or servers, if you will, and the core is inside those. We're going to add some special sauce, some special software. On the right-hand side, you can see that we're based on OpenStack. We're based on Ubuntu and KVM and XFS and all those other things. In fact, we were just awarded our patent actually about a month ago. So this is all not patent pending, but all patented technology now that we're using. So all we're doing is we're turning servers into a EMC VNX, let's say, or a traditional RAID chassis. And the nice thing about using OpenStack is I'm showing 5 servers here, but this could be 2 servers. It could be 500 servers. It could be 1,000 servers. So OpenStack manages our resources. It's our cloud console, and it basically manages all the resources that are going on within our VPSA infrastructure, if you will. So real simple, software-defined storage. We're going to basically use some software and some servers. I'm going to create something that used to look like a storage device. Features, real simple, and we'll get into some of the architecture here in a moment, but the features are real simple. It's whatever you would expect to see on a traditional RAID chassis. You give up nothing because it's a software-defined storage device. You have the NFS and CIFS and Active Directory like we talked about. You can do file or block storage. It's thinly provisioned volume, so you don't throw away a lot of storage that you might not be consuming right now. Everything is SSD cache included, so we're gonna back end all the writes with SSD cache. VPSA Enterprise Suite, that's our value-added suite, which gives you snapshots. You can make those snapshots available to any server, whether it be an on-premise or in your cloud, to be able to do that. asynchronous replication, and encryption. Now, I'm going to come back up to the top for just a moment. Why Amazon and Azure and Cloud Sigma and all these companies have really rallied around Zadara has been because they have this single isolated paradigm. They can take one of their storage devices and attach it to a compute server. In Amazon, we'll call it an EC2 server. But there's no way of sharing that across multiple EC2 servers. The storage is sort of a direct attach one-to-one. What we do is we start to bring in a real traditional network architecture that most people are much more familiar with. So that really is what's going on at these public clouds, is the ability to do these real network shared models, if you will. So the first thing you do is you go to our public page. Now we're going to talk about the public cloud here for a moment first, but it's really, one of our design specs was to be able to create a complete array in under 5 minutes. Like I said, we can actually do it in 90 seconds. So you go to our public page and you click on the cloud that you may be a user in. So in this particular case, or a co-location site. So in this particular case, I'm going to select CoreSite as a co-location customer. So let's say that you have some servers living in CoreSite LA. But it could be easily have been Amazon, it could have been Microsoft Azure or whatever. On the right-hand side, we're now selecting the region. So here it's CoreSite LA. And now we're going to select the size of the Zadara engine. This is indicated by how many cores we're going to reserve to this particular VPSA. And then we select how many drives we want. And then we basically select if we want the enterprise suite, which you can notice is a $0 cost to the customer. And we can hit submit. And we can see now on the right that this is $1.37 per hour to be able to do this particular configuration. So we're buying 16 terabytes of storage, and we're going to basically put this into a RAID chassis later on, or a RAID configuration, but it's $1.37 an hour. Now when I hit the go button, I hit the submit button, what really happened? So what does my VPSA really look like? So here I am, VPSA number 1, or customer A, or whatever you want to call me. And so when I hit the go button, OpenStack wakes up, and you can see that there's 2 A's on storage node 1 and storage node 3. Those are where your RAID controller, your SAN controller is living. So we have an active one on node 1, and we have a passive one on node 3, just like you would if you were to buy a RAID chassis. And also, if you can see down below, I reserved 4 drives because that's what the customer chose. And now that becomes their VPSA, which is indicated by this little icon in the upper left. So anytime you see that little icon, you're going to see 3 things. You're going to see the 2 RAID controllers in the light blue at the top. You're going to see the cache, which is indicated in the green area, and then you're going to see the disks that the customer has selected. So that icon represents the questions that were answered on this particular screen right here, the public cloud. So just keep that in the back of your mind that that's what we're going to do. Now, company B comes in right behind and creates their VPSA with a basic controller and 10 drives. And because we have full isolation, they have their own unique cores. They have their own unique drives, not virtual drives, but physical drives. And now they have their VPSA, which is a little bit larger than Company B or Department B or whatever. So if this is on-premise, all these departments are going to be isolated. If this is in the cloud, then clearly we have to be able to do that. So you can see now that each VPSA is very unique. So now let's talk about use case number 1. Use case number 1 is in the cloud. Now that we've created this VPSA, shown by the icon in the upper right, we can now, in Virginia, in California, in Ireland, in Tokyo, in Australia, doesn't matter where we are, we can now connect using Direct Connect, which is a 1 millisecond network between us in Equinix or other colos and the Amazon environment. So everybody out here that clicked that they're using Amazon, you know what an EC2 server is and you know what an EBS is. So if you notice, the paradigm there, like I said, is a direct attach model. We have the ability to actually connect a VPSA to multiple EC2 servers. We have some customers that are running NFS that are running up to 170 NFS mount points to one VPSA. 170 NFS mount points to one VPSA, sharing for web content or documentation or whatever we want to do. We also, this slide doesn't show it, but we can also go to multiple availability zones. So in the East Coast, I think Amazon has 5 or 6 AZs. We can also go to multiple AZs because we're using this Direct Connect content. So down below is our infrastructure. That's what lives in the environment. We've created the VPSA with 4 drives and, say, 2 controllers, baby controllers, and we've now connected those using Direct Connect over to our EC2 servers. In the core site configuration, we have, this is what we've installed. We have 5 storage nodes, Huawei technology. We have 124 terabyte drives. We have 10 200 gig drives for our SD caching, and we have front end and back end gigabit networking. So this is basically what we have in our LA configuration, and this is always going to be growing. I think actually this is 5 storage nodes, but it may be actually more than that at this point. I think when I did this slide, it might have been 5. I think it might be up to 10 right now. As customers consume more, we simply stay in front of them and we add more storage nodes. We blend them in. OpenStack says, I see you, the 5 new storage nodes. I'm now going to make an environment out of that, and it manages our resources. So now if I'm in CoreSite or one of the other co-location sites that I showed, now use case number 2 is we're not going to use Direct Connect. You don't have EC2 servers in Amazon. You're now a customer that basically hasn't brought yourself to the cloud, but you may either have workstations and servers in a co-location site that we're in, or you may be wanting to use a co-location site. So now you think of it, you can rent a rack in a colo site, you can rent or buy some servers and workstations, but you don't have to worry about the storage. The storage is, again, as a service, completely operating expense. So the same infrastructure that I talked about before, but now we're going to use a cross-connect rather than a Direct Connect. So this has no bearing on Amazon or Azure. This is basically just a complete co-location configuration. Okay, Nick, polling question number 3, it looks like.
Excellent. So this is our final polling question for today, and what we'd like to find out now, if possible, is just a little bit about your plans with regards for deploying storage as a service, this technology that Doug's been talking about here. Let us know if you've already deployed it, or if you think your time frame would be within the next 6 months. If you think you're more of a 6 months to 2 years out kind of time frame, more than 2 years out, or if you have no plans on deploying something like this. So this just gives us a feel for where you are in the adoption curve. And as Doug has alluded, it looks like the market is really heading this way. There's tremendous benefits that we've discussed. So it's one of these things that's just coming, and it's a matter of just trying to understand where you are in this adoption curve. So we'll give you a few more seconds to vote, and then Doug will take us the rest of the way home. As I mentioned, we are getting a lot of good questions, so please keep those coming. We have about 6 or 7 questions in so far, so we can probably handle at least 10, so please keep those coming. And we'll go ahead and close out the poll now, and let's get a feel for what you guys are doing here. So as we share it, nobody is yet already deployed, but a percentage of you are deploying within the next 6 months. The bulk of you are thinking this is a 6 months to 2 years kind of time frame, and then there's a good percentage of you that don't have any plans to do it at all, which is that's okay as well. So I'm going to go ahead and send it back over to you, Doug, to take us down the home stretch.
Thank you so much, and thanks everybody for sticking with us here. Now what I want to do, so everything I talked about before is an hourly commit. It's as a service. It can be rendered in all the various clouds that I showed. And this presentation, I believe, Nick, will be available to the audience. So they'll be able to download this material, which is fine. You notice there's no confidentiality on any of these materials. So you can basically download this and refresh yourself as you move forward in some of your decision criteria. And it's also recorded. So now I want to introduce on-premise as a service. And so what we have been working on is we've now established ourselves into the cloud ecosystems with, like I said, Amazon brings us in, Azure brings us in, all these companies bring us in because we solve tremendous, we bring tremendous value and solve tremendous challenges that they have in their cloud environments themselves. So we said, okay, we've done that. Now how do we make an on-premise environment where customers don't have the vision of moving to the cloud, or the cloud maybe is only at 10 or 20% and they want to basically put a lot of their storage still back home, is how do we make this sort of the best of both worlds? So what we do is we put together this VPSA environment, which is fully managed. So it's our management. It's kind of like renting an Avis car. When you rent an Avis car, you're not expected to change the oil. You're not expected to put a new muffler on or new tires. It's completely managed by Zadara, and it's pure operating expense. So we're going to deliver an elastic model that's completely on demand. And when I say on demand, you're only going to pay for consumption. And I have a couple of slides that'll talk to this. But let's say that you say to me, Doug, I need about 100 terabytes, but I'm only going to use 30 or 40 terabytes for the first 3 or 4 months. That's fine. I'm only going to charge you for 30 or 40 terabytes by the month. As you grow to 60 terabytes, that's great. As you grow to 70 terabytes, that's great. And then when basically we get to about 70, we're going to go ahead and ship some more equipment, and the equipment is then going to get blended in, and you're going to basically now continue to pay as a consumption model. So it's not a lease. It's not a long-term accounting item or anything like that. You don't have to depreciate it. You don't have to do anything like that. It's basically just a consumption model, if you will. We have lots of different payments and things. It is a 6-month commit because I'm gonna actually buy some hardware from Huawei, and I'm going to install it in your data center, and I'm going to basically take some cost associated with this, of course. So I do ask for this particular model, a 6-month commit, but the monthly usage charge applies. We can now do remote monitoring, updates, operations. We do this. We have a NOC, and we basically monitor all our customers. We have hardware replacement, 7x24 phone support, and all those types of things. So what we want to do is we want to match the way the customer would like to work. And I use this, if there's any service providers out there, the way you make your money as a service provider is you invoice your customers, and they pay you on a monthly basis. And so that's great. You make $10,000 on a given customer. You invoice them. They pay you for $10,000. What we want to do is we want to align with that practice. So if you make money on a monthly basis, we're going to charge you on a monthly basis. So no capital expense, no big $200,000 CapEx that you have to now basically chew away at for the next 2 years to start to become profitable. We're only going to charge you a percentage of what you're using for that customer that gains you $10,000 in revenue, which hopefully, if the business works well, it's going to be considerably less than that $10,000 because you're adding value and you're adding things like that. So that's really what we're doing is we're aligning with the way the customers receive their money with the way they spend their money on resources. So the concept for on-prem as a service. For on-prem customers, this is use case number 3, is we have this environment right now, which is 2 storage nodes and 70 drives. So that's basically what we've installed in this particular customer site, let's say. And so the customer goes into that graphical interface that's dedicated now. I can create a dedicated interface just for company X or company Y. So you don't have all those cloud companies on there. It's just dedicated to you. And now marketing comes in and says, okay, I'd like to create a VPSA, and I think there's 20 drives there. So they've selected probably a boost engine, which has 4 cores, and 20 drives. And then engineering came in, well, they want a test environment, and they want to basically come in for 8 drives and probably a basic engine. So I charge the customer, in this particular example, let's say it's August, I charge the company for 2 VPSAs and 28 drives used. So all the other white drives that aren't bolded, I don't charge for those. And then basically the next month, let's say in September, sales comes in and says, I'd like to now create a VPSA with, in this particular case, we have 12 drives and probably also a basic engine. And now the September payment goes up to 40 drives. If the next month sales deletes their VPSA, we drop back down to the 28 drives, and it's always going to be this consumption model. Now, if you're a service provider, and you are buying this to segment this out to individual customers, just change the terms marketing, sales, and engineering with company 1, company 2, and company 3, and you'll be very happy to know, of course, that they have full isolation. Company 1 can't impact the performance of company 2, and so forth. So remember, this is in your data center. Could be in a colo, could be in your data center, could be wherever you want to go. It's completely isolated and completely able to do this. So here we have sort of the summary of this last use case is we have VPSA 1, VPSA 2, 3, 4, and 5, and each one has this really hard barrier around it, if you will, that basically shows that each of these users are independent. We're going to take standard servers, our software, and create this enterprise storage as a service environment. And when I'm really happy to hear there's a couple of things that are going on in the polling questions is that, A, I heard a lot of people are moving from capital expense to operating expense. That's perfect. B, well, the first polling question, I also saw that that a lot of people are already in Amazon. So that's how you can sort of dip your toe in the water, is we have trial environments and so forth for Amazon or Azure or things like that. And then also one of the polling questions said that that you're looking at storage as a service down the road as well. So so really interesting. We're in line with what you folks are working on. Now, disaster recovery is use case number 4. So you can see that we're in Equinixes, we're in Aircoms, we're in Cloud Sigmas, we're in KVHs, we're all over the place. So if you were to put, so let's talk about cloud for just a moment. If you were to become a customer in Amazon East, which is running on Huawei servers, like I said, they're one of our longest and most trusted service providers of this technology. But let's say that we wanted to create an environment in Amazon or Azure on the East Coast, and then you wanted to, so you want to try that, you want to test it, it's all working good. And you say, but Doug, 50%, 60% of my storage is going to have to stay on-premise for lots of different reasons. So let's say that we put a Z in Germany. So we put a Z in Germany, or we put a Z in South America, or we put a Z in Des Moines, Iowa. Doesn't matter to me. But now we put your Z in your data center. Any of these other environments can be targets for DR. Now I know DR is one of the most time-consuming design things you can do in a data center. Is, do I need another building? Do I need to have bricks and mortar? Do I need to have servers? Do I need to have disk? What do I need to do? So now you can say, all right, I'm going to take my data and put it maybe on-premise, but I'm going to use one of these sites to rent the servers and rent the storage and basically be able to put a disaster recovery site together in no time at all, and with a very defined cost basis that you might be looking at. So this is the world. We're adding new Zadara sites every month. We'll be adding 3 new sites for another co-location site here in the United States, in California, in New York. There'll be one in St. Louis. There'll be one in Tennessee. So we're going to be adding an awful lot of additional sites to this model. So the use cases, just to kind of think about things a little bit, is here's a company called Commercial. They have tremendous amount of video product. They basically post a lot of their marketing materials and things for the car industry. They do editing, rendering, transcoding, things like that. They're basically international. They're a big sequential workload where they do a lot of reading and a lot of writing and things like that. They needed to make sure that their standard deviation of performance didn't change more than a few % per day or per month or per week. So they told us that the standard deviation is less than 3%. What's that mean? It says that if they can get 100 megabytes per second of bandwidth on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, that the standard deviation is less than 3%, which is perfect. That's exactly what they wanted. The replication can be used for offsite DR. They're doing replication to another site within our VPSA structure. And then they use snapshots. The snapshot, we haven't talked a lot about snapshots. I didn't want to go too deep into this presentation. This is kind of an awareness. But snapshots, what it means is it's sort of the undo button, if you will. Snapshots protect you from what we'll call logical failures. And if you think of the industry, if you think of what's going on, storage is pretty reliable nowadays. You don't get the red blinky lights, the errors. You don't get that anymore. Everything's built into a highly available manner. The industry states that around 93% of all the reasons that people go to a backup to recover is not a hardware failure any longer. It's a logical failure. It's something happened to the data. It got corrupted because somebody edited a journal or a log file. somebody deleted something, somebody overwrote something, all these things. So snapshots allow you to recover from those type of events. Swiss Topo is one of my favorite ones. Swiss Topo basically is a Switzerland company, as you would expect. They work in tandem with the Swiss government, and what they do is they basically have cameras and satellites all over Europe, and what they do is they basically store all the data, all the what they call geospatial data, on VPSA. So it's basically mostly read-only data for their customers. Of course, they have to write the data there, and they have a very large environment. They look at natural disasters. They basically look at just maps for hunters or hikers or things in Switzerland and things like that. And they needed to move this application to the cloud so they could have the elasticity. They've already grown 4 times since they've been with us. They didn't imagine that they would grow this quickly, and in order to be able to do this in 90 seconds to add more drives, they basically really are enjoying the ability to use VPSA to have this very fluid and very flexible environment. We're in education. London School of Business and Finance. We're basically working with the Dean of Students there and their IT management. And they needed an environment where it needed to be extremely flexible. They needed to be able to create accounts for students. They needed to be able to delete accounts. They needed to be able to increase storage. They needed to increase the engine performance during enrollment and admissions and things like that. So they needed to be able to do all of that. And then they also needed the ability to do DR to other facilities and so forth. Let me come back to Swiss Topo real quick, because if you do a Google of Swiss Topo and Zadara, you'll find a really nice white paper that's been done with that company. And then, of course, software as a service. Everybody thinks of software as a service as the old Salesforce.com. They were really the first ones that moved the application away from your data center and sort of put it out into the cloud, made it so everybody could access it, and you didn't have to have a footprint on your data center in your environment. It made it very easy to start to adopt to smartphones and intelligent devices, handheld devices, and things like that. Well, Deloitte has also created a SaaS environment where they don't want to have software in their data centers any longer. They want to be able to create this environment for analytics and all those types of things. So they needed to have this block storage, which wasn't available in Amazon. They wanted to be able to have consistent performance. They needed to have this pay-as-you-go in cloud economics, because remember, they're getting paid from their customers, their software as a service customers, on a monthly basis. They want to pay their bills on a monthly basis as well. They didn't want to have this huge capital expense. You think of Deloitte as being a huge, huge company. Well, they are, but this particular division is sort of this new toe-in-the-water type of what are we going to do when we start to design some of these new SaaS applications. And then I love this picture, frustrated in the cloud. Anybody that is in the cloud that is constricted with the size of volumes, the type of interconnects, not being able to share storage amongst multiple EC2 servers in the case of Amazon, maybe no encryption, maybe all those types of things, we should definitely be talking about that. So I promised that I would finish this up about 15 minutes before the hour, so we would have some time for questions. But let me go through this quickly. If anybody out there is tired of using a valuable capital expense for your storage solution, then we should talk. Unable to easily change your resources as needed. It basically, in order to change your resources, it takes makes a 3-hour phone call or a face-to-face meeting. Yes, I'll order you more drives. Yes, I'll do this. Yes, I'll do that. And now you have something. If you want something that's easily changeable and ready to go, then we should talk. The idea of pay-as-you-go seems intriguing. Software as a service, of course. And then creating this hybrid cloud. Think about what your DR plans are for the next 12 to 18 months, and think about whether the combination of maybe a hybrid cloud with maybe a VPSA on-premise would also help you with some of your DR plans and so forth. So here's the final slide, and I'm going to turn this back over to Nick, and let's see what kind of questions we got.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Doug. That was a very clear and concise description, and we do have quite a few questions. The first ones I'll just deal with myself, which is basically where can I get more information? So here you can see on the screen we have our URLs of our websites. We have email addresses that you can send email queries to. We have phone numbers you can call. One of the questions is, how do I become a Huawei partner? So to become a partner, go on this Huawei Enterprise USA website, and you'll see a special tab on the top level navigation for partners. If you're not already a partner, one of the links on there says apply to be a partner. It's a very quick and easy process, and once you become a partner, that will give you access to a variety of information that really is only available to our partners, and that includes things like sales training on all of our solutions. It includes the ability to register deals, to get pricing information and the like. So that's definitely the plan that you want to go to there. A couple questions, and I think between the two Dougs, you guys can figure out how you want to split these up. But you talked a little bit about the upfront cost, but one of the questions is, can you elaborate a little bit more on the costs and also the commitment length? So can you I know you mentioned it, but can you repeat a little bit about the commitment length that's required to go with the Zadara service?
Sure. This is Doug Jury. I'll go ahead and take that one. So for the VPSA, like we said, it's completely operating expense, so there's no upfront cost whatsoever. We even pay, in the example of Amazon, we pay for the Direct Connect and things like that. So there's really, when you look at that number when you create your VPSA, that's kind of the walk-away number. In the cloud, because we've already got this infrastructure there, it's a 1 hour commit. So you could literally create it at 9, you could run a test for an hour, and you could delete it at 10. Whether you'd ever do that, no. Most of our customers will hang around for weeks and months and years, but you could. Our level of granularity for billing is 1 hour. For the on-premise, it's 6 months, because we have to actually ship product and put it out there and do some installation and so forth. We're going to ask that you really have thought this through and that we want to at least have it there for 6 months. But you'll know exactly what the price will be on a monthly basis based on how many VPSAs you may create. Remember, it's an on-demand type of model. So, and once again, my name on the left here. If you have any questions on pricing, I'd be happy to help you there.
Excellent. The next question is trying to figure out what Huawei infrastructure is at the heart of this storage as a service solution. So I'm not sure if Doug Walsh might want to take this, but the question is, what model Huawei servers are used, and can you talk a little bit about the networking products that are tied into this overall solution?
Yeah, great question. In fact, I'll turn that one over to Doug Jury, since he has had working case studies on this already.
Right. So for our for the infrastructure there, we're using E3500 servers, and we're using a range of disks depending on what the use case might be. It could be 200 gigabyte SSDs for our cache. It could be 4 terabyte drives for repository. It could be 600 or 1 terabyte SAS drives for our environments there. We use 10 gigabit switches as our front end and back end, and we use a 1 gigabit switch for our firewall and our ability to log in and check out the use cases or check out the environments that are on premise, let's say there. So it's all Huawei servers. I don't know specifically the actual switches that we use. I think that roams around a little bit based on what's available at that particular period of time. Remember, we've had this stuff up and running for over 3 years, but I know the E3500 servers is something that we've really grown to like a lot as far as the configuration.
Excellent. And just to respond to the networking side, I believe it's the S5700 and 6700 switches that are at the core of the networking solution, with different configurations, as you mentioned, coming in all the time. Yep. So it's just something to pay attention to. Here's a question that came in from one of our frequent webinar attendees, one of our friends down in the Riverside area. He wants to know, does Zadara have co-location facilities in Southern California, and if so, where's the SoCal colo located?
So we do. We're in CoreSite, LA, on Wilshire, and we basically, if you wanted to, there's a couple of ways of connecting to a colo. You can use a Metro link, and you can connect if you're in the Southern California area. You can do a Metro link in. Just remember that the further you go, the more the latency is, so your use case may change a little bit based on how far away you are from the colo. But you can Metro link in and use it as a target. You can basically use it as your storage and still have your servers, say, somewhere else outside the colo. Or you can basically jump in with both feet and have your servers and your compute living in that colo as well. And once again, we're in CoreSite in Wilshire today. We have well over, I think we have 300 or 400 terabytes available there today for anybody to take a test. And I want to, so Nick, let me stop right there for a minute. Is we do have the ability to do trials. We don't want anybody. If you ever get an email from me, it's going to say at the bottom that customer service is in our DNA, and you see some people really kind of talk about that. But at the core of Zadara is we are customer service driven. We have to be in order to enamor ourselves to these cloud customers and on-premise customers as well. So everybody gets a 7-day free trial. We really want everybody to feel comfortable with the technology.
Excellent, excellent. This is another question. This is coming from one of our great partners in the Midwest, in the Chicago area. And so this is kind of a partner perspective question. They're saying, what is the difference in cost between selling the Zadara solution and or owning and building our own solution out of our own data center? Can you just kind of give a feeling from a partner perspective as the dynamic of going with your solution versus trying to build this thing out?
Sure. Well, the one thing that everybody forgets about is the human element. So when you put in one of our solutions, you don't. In fact, let me give you a good anecdote. Is I have a customer that says I have 8 NetApp and network appliance boxes. I have 8 of them, and I have 3 people assigned to those 8 NetApp boxes. So I have 3 IT managers that manage the allocation of disks. They create logical units. They connect them to the storage area network. They do all this. So there's 3 full-time people. In Southern Cal, we have to assume that that's $100,000 or $120,000 a person, fully burdened, probably even more than that. The same customer says, I have the same exact amount of storage with Zadara, and I do not have an IT manager assigned to it. So that's the first piece, the human element. This is because everybody can create their own VPSAs. It's on demand. You don't have to get an IT manager responsible to sort of do some of this. We do the upgrades of the software. We handle the break fix of the hardware. We do all those types of things. So we're going to basically take care of that. That's the first piece. The second piece is if you go off and buy a traditional RAID array and you want 100 terabytes, you pay 100 terabytes from that day. If you put in my 100 terabytes, you may pay only 20 or 30% of that. As you grow into that storage. So you don't have to over-allocate, over-purchase. So all those types of things. And then if we look at the cost per gigabyte per month, which is what most on-demand software, storage as a service products look at, we look at cost per gigabyte per month. And if you're looking at using our 3 or 5 terabyte drives on-premise, we can get into the sub-10 cents per gigabyte per month of a monthly cost, and generally we're going to be closer to the 5 cents per gigabyte per month. I just did a quote yesterday where the company's going to need, over time, the next 3 years, they're going to need 6 petabytes over the next 3 years, and we are below 1 cent per gigabyte per month as they grow into this. They're going to be growing at about 1 petabyte in a chunk, so we're going to do 6 growth curves over the next 3 years. So it all depends on your numbers. It all depends on what you're looking at and so forth. But human elements, key. Not overbuying is also important. Not having to have maintenance and things like that charges. It's completely a very definable number that you can go with. At that point, your mileage may vary.
Excellent. That's a great answer. The next question is, how big can this solution scale? So can you talk a little bit? You've talked about some of the easy way to get in, get started easily, but how big does this thing go?
So per VPSA, so remember, VPSA is a usable piece of the larger infrastructure. So per VPSA, using our 5 terabyte drives and RAID 1, each individual volume, if you will, can scale to a little bit over 200 terabytes. That's an individual volume. Think of it, for you folks that are in data centers, think of a logical unit or a LUN. We can basically build a LUN up to 200 terabytes. Okay. Now the infrastructure based on OpenStack, Rackspace and NASA tested OpenStack with 1,000 servers. So 1,000 servers in one storage environment, if you will, is what we can grow this to. We haven't tested 1,000. We've tested to about 250 servers. But if you think about 1,000 as being sort of the end point, and you look at the capacity we can put behind each individual storage node, on paper, we can build this to an exabyte.
Wow. That's a big number.
It's a big number.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, just a couple more here. One of them is, if we missed you at VMworld last week, what's the best way to arrange a demo, and how can I see a demo of this solution?
Sure. Just send me an email, doug@zadarastorage.com, or you can send an email to, you can go to www.zadarastorage.com and register for a free trial. There's a big free trial button right there, and I'll get that. And when you register it, there's a little area that says promo, and you can put in there, went to the Huawei Doug Jury, Doug Walsh, webinar, or however you want to indicate that you were in my webinar, and then basically you can just go in there and register for an account. And then today alone we have 4 onboarding. So we don't expect people to figure this out. It's not that tough, but we, once again, our customer service in our DNA, every customer gets a 1-hour dedicated onboarding session with one of our engineers.
Fantastic. And I know you definitely covered this, but just to clarify, because I think someone still may be confused, the question is, does the Zadara solution use Amazon storage on its back end?
It's funny because I was at VMworld, so I'll finish with a little bit of humor here. Is you always have people that come up to you at trade shows and they'll go, okay, so what do you do? And then I try to explain what I do, and then they'll say, okay, so you're EBS storage on Amazon. I say, no, we're not EBS storage on Amazon. He goes, okay, so you're S3. I say, no, we're not S3. Okay, so you're using Glacier. No, we're not using Glacier, but if you'd let me explain, because you asked me a question, I'd be happy to answer. So it's really funny when you get to trade shows and people are just, of course, they only have, it's like 5-minute dating, right? You only have 5 minutes at each table. So to answer the question, which is really a great question, is it is all ours. It's all Huawei. It's all Huawei disks. It's all Huawei networking. It's basically our software. So it doesn't meet the EBS storage or S3 or Glacier or any of that anywhere in this model at all. It's 100% Zadara storage that we basically present as VPSA elements to either our cloud customer, or we ship these servers and disks and networking to your data center, so it's dedicated as a private cloud for you. So it's neither of the two shall meet. Where the connection point is for Amazon is direct connect, connecting this storage to an EC2 server. Think of it as a fiber channel switch that's getting the storage out of the box and into your storage servers, into your compute servers in your data center. It's exactly the same paradigm.
Well, that's fantastic. And with that, unfortunately, we are out of time. If we did not answer your question, we will follow up with you directly. But first, I just want to give a huge thanks to Doug Walsh and Doug Jury for just a phenomenal presentation and a great overview. Once again, thank you to everybody in our audience. The next webinar we have coming up is actually on the topic of the campus of the future, where we'll be talking about how Huawei is partnering with school districts around the country to provide cutting-edge solutions for today's educational environments. That's going to be on September 17th. It's 2 weeks from yesterday. So if you didn't receive an invite to that, you can always go to the Huawei Enterprise USA website and sign up and register for that webinar coming up. So with that, we're going to close out the webinar. Thanks again to Doug and Doug, and thanks to all of you in the audience, and we hope to see you again very soon on another Huawei webinar.
Thanks, everybody. Bye now.
Thank you, Nick.